Justin Strawn podcast. I am your host, Justin Strawn. Glad to be back with you after a little bit of a brief absence. Well, maybe not so brief, but a little bit of an extended absence on my ability to record. Haven't been able to record a lot the last couple of weeks. I always said when I started this podcast up that this would be I will do it as I can type of a podcast. Preference would be to do it twice a week, but sometimes life just gets in the way, and kind of that's been the case here recently. So glad to be back, though. Glad to be recording here on a Thursday morning. Hopefully, I'll get back to being able to do 2 shows a week. I'm trying to start working in exercise, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to find time to record. So I'm still trying to figure that part of it out as well. But I will do my best to get on mic and record at least once a week, hopefully twice a week when I can. So let's go ahead and get into it. We've got a lot to talk about today. As a reminder, if you haven't followed me on all of the platforms that you are a part of, I am probably there as well and would really appreciate it if you did. I'm on, obviously, here on TikTok since I record these live on TikTok. I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I'm on YouTube. I get quite a bit of views on our YouTube channel, so that's really nice for those of you who have been catching us there. That helps out a lot. And as always, there are the podcast catchers as well. And Apple is getting ready to roll out video podcasts as well, even though where I upload mine to, they currently aren't supporting it, but eventually that will be the case. So for those of you who are watching on video and for whatever reason just like to watch my lovely face every so often, I appreciate you guys tuning in and checking it out. So like I said, catch us on all those places, rate, review on all those places as well. It helps me out a lot in terms of getting the show into the ears of new listeners. All right, now, as always, as a reminder for the few since I've been here a while, if you are not here for certain points of the podcast, if there are certain things that you have come to catch me on, then you can check the timestamps. There will be timestamps in terms of what I'm covering and when I'm covering it. We'll be talking a lot about Mississippi State here at the top. I hadn't planned to talk too much about basketball going forward, but then Josh Hubbard does what he did last night, and that is worthy of a mention here on the podcast. So we'll discuss it. We'll talk about the baseball team's early season start. Gotten off to a pretty good start. They've been a little shaky at times, but for the most part, they're doing exactly what we thought they would. Then I want to talk about something I got a chance to do last week when I went to Seattle for a couple of days, really just a day, honestly. But went to Seattle for a day and got to take part in a press conference with Sam Darnold. That was always fun. And then we'll finish up with a discussion of a Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Haven't watched a ton of TV here recently, so I'll be, that's really the only thing I've been watching a whole lot of here recently, so I'll discuss that there at the end of the show. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. Mississippi State basketball team, they end up beating Auburn last night. I don't remember what the final score was. I think they won by like 5 or 6 points, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly what the margin of victory was, but look, this team is not making it to the NCAA tournament. That's just not going to happen. Mississippi State's those dreams have sailed away. The only way that they have a chance to make it to the NCAA tournament at this point is if they were to run the table in the SEC tournament and make it in via winning the SEC tournament. That's their only path to an NCAA tournament bid. So the main thing for the rest of the season, I talked about this before my little hiatus that I had on the podcast. I just want to see this team compete against, the lower half of the conference. That's really what I want to see. I want to see them compete against that part of the conference and be able to show that they can beat those types of teams. And Auburn, despite the fact they got off to a 5-3 start, have now lost 5 games in a row, and they are right smack dab in the middle of the bottom half of the conference with Mississippi State, with Ole Miss, with Missouri, with all those teams. And not Missouri may be doing better, but Oklahoma, South Carolina, LSU, those are the types of teams that Auburn has now kind of sunk to since Bruce Pearl left, and they've lost these 5 games in a row. But the story of the night obviously was Josh Hubbard. Josh Hubbard has probably one of the greatest halves of basketball that I have ever seen before in my entire life. He goes off for a total of 46 points in the game. He comes up one shy of the school record. Bailey Howell set that record way back in the 60s when he was playing. Maybe the 50s, late 50s. I don't remember exactly when Bailey Howell was here. But he goes off for, like I said, 46 points, for the entire game. 35 of those points come in the first half. He sets a school record for most three-pointers in the game. He set that in the first half. He hit the school record had been 8. He sets that record in the first half by making 9. He makes one additional three-pointer in the second half and ends up scoring 46. Ends up shooting 10 of 16 from the three-point line. 15 of 27 overall, or 15 of 29 overall. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he basically just has one of the best performances we've ever seen in a Bulldog uniform, period. It's not the most important game in the world. Like I said, Mississippi State is not making it to the NCAA tournament. They probably won't even make it to the NIT tournament. But for him to go off like that and to just put up a bonkers game was just truly impressive. Mississippi State almost blows it and kind of would have put a really sour note on this performance if they had. They were up by 18 at one point in the second half. Auburn comes all the way back and ends up taking a 7-point lead with about 4 or 5 minutes left to play. I don't remember exactly when they ended up going up by 7 points. I think it was 80 to 73. But then Mississippi State shows some resiliency, which they really haven't done a whole lot of this year, and end up closing out the game strong. They end up pulling away a little bit at the end. And they were really, you could tell at the very end of the game, they were trying their best to get Josh Hubbard the ball because they knew they were going to foul. And if Josh Hubbard gets the ball, then he ends up getting 2 free throws and then likely has a chance to break Valley Hall's record. As a matter of fact, he shot a little bit less than he normally does at the free throw line. He's about an 85% free throw shooter. And he went 6 of 9 from the free throw line last night. If he just does what he normally does, he breaks Valley Hall's record because he goes like 8 of 9 from the free throw line. And unfortunately, that didn't happen for him last night. But like I said, it's just an all-time performance from him. It was truly remarkable to watch. I almost didn't watch the game because I just kind of got to the point where I just expect this team to lose. But they ended up beating Ole Miss this past Saturday, which was really good. They really just kind of handled Ole Miss at Oxford, which was really surprising to see. But that kind of gave me a little. I was like, you know what? Maybe they got a chance here in this game against Auburn. Auburn had been playing well. Like I said, they came into the game having lost 4 straight. Now those 4 straight games they lost were to really good teams in the SEC, some of the top teams in the SEC. But they have lost 4 straight games. Now they're at a 5-game losing streak. So I was wondering if this was a team that they could find a way to get a win. And it was going to be a big game regardless, just because, and this is really kind of what pulled me back in and made me decide to go ahead and watch, was Keyshawn Murphy was making his return to Mississippi State since he left last year. He entered the transfer portal, and he went to Auburn. Most people think that the reason he went there was because he wanted to play for Bruce Pearl. Then Bruce Pearl kind of unexpectedly retires, and John Cohen ends up hiring his son, Stephen Pearl, on a permanent basis, which is not looking just real good at this point. But it was going to be a big game, like I said, because Keyshawn Murphy was making his return to Humphrey Coliseum. And he doesn't have a good game. He ends up going 1 of 7 from the field. He misses an easy, wide-open dunk. And you could tell he was really wanting to, send a message to the Mississippi State fans because every time he got the ball, they were booing him mercilessly. And he showed, I'll just be real honest with you, I think we saw a reason why he didn't want to continue to play for Chris Jans. Chris Jans is a coach that requires discipline, that requires you to keep your head on your shoulders, and Keyshawn Murphy wasn't doing that last night. He showed a lot of immaturity in the way that he was playing. He showed a lot of immaturity in just what he wanted to do. Like I said, he was really wanting to send a statement and try to silence the people who were booing him. He let the crowd get to him. And you can't do that with Chris Jans. If you're playing like that, and if you're playing like I want to make sure I send a message to these fans in the stands, he's going to pull you off the court. I mean, that's just what is going to end up happening. I think back to Josh Hubbard's very first game in Ole Miss, the fans were just booing him viciously every single time that Josh Hubbard got the ball his freshman year at Ole Miss because he had originally been an Ole Miss signee, and then when they fired their coach, he released of his letter of intent, and that's when he ends up signing with Mississippi State. And they, like I said, the Ole Miss fans were just killing him because they wanted him to be a rebel, and he never let it get to him. I mean, he obviously wanted to play well just because that's what you want to do. But like I said, I think that just shows the difference in what these two players are. Josh Hubbard, despite the fact that he's a year or two younger than Keyshawn Murphy, shows a lot more maturity than what Keyshawn Murphy was doing. And I think, like I said, I think this is the reason why Keyshawn Murphy is not on this team this year, is because I think Christians would have loved to have had him back, but it's just that type of playing style, that type of mentality just doesn't mix. And if you ever watched Auburn play these past few years under Bruce Pearl, as good as they have been, as great as they have been, they are a team that plays with their heart on their sleeve, and they let people get to them. And the thing that they've been able to do under Bruce Pearl is they were able to use that as a motivating factor, and they use that to play better. And they're not doing it under Stephen Pearl. Like I said, if Bruce Pearl is there, he understands how to channel what he was getting, what that energy he was getting from Keyshawn Murphy last night, and figures out a way to use it and make it more productive. But under Stephen Pearl, it's just not happening. And like I said, it's a very different look for this Auburn team. They're not as good as they have been, and this was a really good one for them. Look, they could end up winning like 7 or 8 games in SEC play, and it's so weird because that's what they've done under Christians the previous 3 years. They went 8-10 in SEC play the previous 3 years. It looks like they're probably going to finish right around there again. They should beat South Carolina. They've got some other winnable games. They've got a winnable game against They got a winnable game against Missouri because Missouri will come to them. They'll probably lose to Alabama. They've never beaten Alabama under Nate Oates. And that probably won't change when they go to Alabama. I can't remember who their other game is against. They've got 5 more. I'm not sure who else they have. Florida. They probably won't be Florida. But the other 3 games are winnable games. And if you can, then you're at 8-10. And that's kind of where you've been every year under Chris Jans. And what's going to come down to is all those losses in the non-conference. That's what's going to end up hurting you more than anything else. And that's what's going to keep them out of the NCAA tournament this year. It's why you've got to win those games. And up until this year, that hadn't been the case. Now, let's look a little bit forward to next year. If Mississippi State can keep some of this team together, if they can keep, Josh Hubbard, I think, is just a through-and-through Bulldog. I don't think he's going to leave. Mississippi State will give him whatever it takes to keep him there, so I'm not worried about Josh Hubbard. But can you keep some of these other guys? Can you keep King Grace? Can you keep I'm trying to think some of the players that are there. I can't remember. He's a small forward / power forward. He's a freshman. He looked really good. So, like I said, there are some players that they need to make sure that they keep. They've got a really good incoming freshman class, and then they've got to make better evaluations though in the portal to fill out the class. But that's what they've got to do this year. What they didn't do this past year is keep a decent amount of this team together so that they're not having to build from scratch. Because that's what hurt them so much in the non-conference portion of the season is they just were not a team. And they took too long to come together and to gel and kind of figure things out. And it's too late at this point. So they've got to keep a little bit of cohesion, a little bit of consistency going into next year, and we'll see what they do. Now for the women keep kind of doing what they needed to do just to kind of stay in NCAA tournament contention. They are by the guy who's like the Joe Lenardi version of women's basketball. I can't remember his name, but he's got them like the first team, like the top team of the last 4 buys. So they're pretty comfortably in the NCAA tournament at this point. They just need to make sure that they win the games that they're supposed to win and not lose any games that they're not supposed to lose. They did that this past weekend against Arkansas. That was a team that was 0-11 coming into that game. They ended up winning that game pretty easily. The women's team should end up making it to the NCAA tournament. Now, how good this team is, I still don't know. I mean, there are times when they look good, and there are times when they don't look great. And like I said, that non-conference slate is what's going to end up costing them. Like they could be, with their record, they could be like a 5 seed, but they played such a weak non-conference. They don't have that many good quality wins on their record. They're basically getting in on the fact that they have just won all the games that they're supposed to win. They've got a couple of upsets on their resume, but not a whole lot. But the women's team, they should end up being in the NCAA tournament. We'll see what they can do once they get there. Like I said, they're looking like an 8 or a 9 seed, maybe a 10 seed. And what can you do with that? Well, I mean, who knows? But you at least give yourself a chance if you make it to the NCAA tournament. They've got some good-looking freshmen, so they've got some things they can build upon if they can keep this team together. So, like I said, I'll be very interested to see what the women's team does once they reach postseason play. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the baseball team. The baseball team is off to a 5-0 start. They looked good, not great against Hofstra. They made it was a lot closer than what a lot of fans were hoping for. I know a lot of fans were hoping that Mississippi State would come out against Hofstra and just run rule them all 3 games and just make quick work of them, and that didn't end up happening. And I think Brian Haydad and Robbie Falk made a couple of really good points on Thunder and Lightning right after the weekend series. Basically, all the guys who played the best in the weekend against Hofstra, all the guys who played better than everybody else were guys who had played at Dudy Noble last year. They know what it's like. They were comfortable, and you could kind of get a sense that all of the newcomers, were a little bit not overwhelmed, but kind of like maybe the moment was a little bit too big for them in terms of seeing this huge crowd. I mean, they set an opening day record crowd against Hofstra, and if you played at Virginia or South Carolina or whatever, and you walk out against Hofstra, you might have 1,000, 2,000 people there. You're not going to have 12,000 people in the stands wanting to see you play Hofstra. And you hear so much about the crowds, and they've probably seen them on TV. They've heard about the atmosphere that's at Dudy Noble. They've probably seen all those things. But once you actually get out there and you experience it and you're on the field for the first time, that can be a very overwhelming, like, oh, wow, it's more than what I could have possibly expected. For Hofstra, I expect this team to be better. We saw more what we were expecting in the midweek games. They ended up scoring, I think, 12 or 13 runs against Troy, a team that is normally pretty good, but they're off to a rough start. But they looked pretty good against Troy. They looked great against Alcorn. They ended up run rolling them. I don't remember what the final score was. I turned it off after it got to like 10-0 in like the second or third inning. But the story of the year so far, these first 5 games, I think is Jack Bauer, because there's been so much talk about this kid. He comes in as a freshman, a left-hander who is throwing 99 plus when he comes into the game. And his first inning of work in the 8th inning on Tuesday night, he ends up striking out the side. Now, it didn't look great all the time, but the Troy hitters just weren't able to hit it. They were doing their best, but as much talk about as there is about the fastball, to me, it was the slider that was the pitch that was to watch. I mean, he was just wiping guys out in that first inning that he pitched with just an absolutely nasty and devastating slider. When you can go from 99, if you can throw your 99 miles per hour fastball and locate it, and then come back and throw just this absolutely devastating slider, you've got something to work with. And my guess is this year, at least, they're only going to keep him in the bullpen. I don't think he's going to probably make any starts. Excuse me. But my guess is that's, like I said, they keep him in the bullpen. And when they do, they'll bring him in for an inning or two. But what I liked about the performance and what I liked from Coach O'Connor on Tuesday night with Jack Bauer was he decided to leave Bauer in the game for the 9th inning as well. And the 9th inning didn't go as well. And I think that's a really good decision. A lot of people said they should have took him out. They should have let him come out with that confidence. But I think he needed to see that he can't just rely on trying to throw the ball past hitters. He's going to have to actually be a pitcher and make pitches. That's the thing that's going to be very important for Jack Bauer going into the future and what he does in later appearances. He can't just rely on being able to throw the ball past people and hope that they swing at wild pitches, because he didn't have a ton of command in the 9th inning. He didn't have a ton of command in the 8th, but he was getting them to swing and miss at a lot of those pitches. And in the 9th, they were holding off on a lot of them. And like I said, this is what he's going to have to learn how to do. He's going to have to learn how to pitch. He needs to see that he can't just rely on stuff alone. He's got to make good quality pitches. It doesn't matter how hard you throw or how devastating your slider is. if you can't control it, it's not going to matter. And I think he really needed to see that in live action and get a taste for that. And I, I think that's part of his mental process. That way, he knows what he needs to work on going forward into the rest of the season. And we'll probably see him a lot in midweek games. We'll probably see him some in maybe mop-up duty in SEC play. And look, if he shows better command and if he shows that he can control the strike zone a lot better than he did in the ninth inning, if he shows improvement in those areas, I wouldn't be surprised to see him pitching in SEC play. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But he definitely has a way to go. He's obviously going to be, have MLB scouts drooling and just can't wait to get him once he becomes a junior after he's had his 3 years. But for now, he's got some stuff to work on. Like I said, he has reason to be excited. He has reason to be confident looking at the eighth inning, but he also has things that he needs and he can point to, and that the coaches can point to and say, "Look, here's what you've got to work on. We saw how good you can be in the eighth, but we also saw what can happen if you're not just really sharp and pinpoint accurate on your pitches in the ninth." And so I think that's something that he can work on and he can build towards. So. All right, let's talk about something I got to do last week. Last week before the Super Bowl, I think it was on Thursday. Yeah, it was on Thursday before the Super Bowl. My friend Ethan Lee, if you're new to my podcast, if you're new to following me on any type of social media or anything, my small little claim to fame is I spent 8 years as a blogger for Mississippi State Sports. I started off with Maroon and White Nation on Fansided. Was there from 2013 to 16, and in 2016 I moved over to the SB Nation site for whom the cowbell tolls. And one of the big reasons why I moved was because a friend of mine, Ethan Lee, he's quite a bit younger than me. He's probably like 20 years younger than I am. He was the head of For Whom the Cowbell Tolls. He had taken over the site, and he had asked me previously if I wanted to come. I wasn't ready to make the transition over to those guys just yet. And then I decided, after having been an editor for Maroon and White Nation for about a year, I decided to go ahead and make the switch because I just didn't want to run a site anymore. So I went to For Whom the Cowbell Tolls just to be a writer, and he's a really good friend of mine. We've only met once in person. Most of our friendship has been through online, but he messaged me on either Wednesday or Thursday before the Super Bowl and asked if I would be willing to go to either Seattle or Boston to take place in a press event with whatever quarterback won the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Seattle Seahawks ended up winning, so this was going to involve Sam Darnold. And at first, I told him, no, I don't think I can do it because at my new job, I don't have any time off, and I'm not going to be able to get up there. And when I told my wife about it, she's like, ask your manager if she can work around it. If you can work extra certain days, just basically work a flexible schedule. And so I did, and my manager was more than willing. She's like, this is just a great opportunity for you. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I ended up hopping on a plane on Monday afternoon after the Super Bowl to go to Seattle. There's no direct flights from Memphis to Seattle, so I ended up stopping in Denver, then landing in Seattle at around 9 o'clock on Monday night, Seattle time. And this is all sponsored by Raising Cane's. Raising Cane's is, if you're obviously, most people are probably familiar with it, but the chicken tender restaurant started in 1996, and they're opening a restaurant in Seattle, I think this week, and maybe even today, if I'm not mistaken. But they were doing this event where they were going to bring in whatever quarterback won the Super Bowl to come and do promos and stuff for their restaurant, and they were going to have a little press conference for the press ahead of time. And Ethan owns his own website. It's called the Underdog Tribune, so if you haven't read it, go check it out. But I covered the event for him. I ended up writing a little story about it, and it was just really, really fun. I really enjoyed doing this. I didn't have a ton of time there because basically I was there from 9 o'clock Monday night until 11 o'clock Tuesday night, and that's when I hopped back on a plane to come back to Memphis. But like I said, it was a really fun event. Sam Darnold, he said a lot of the same things that a lot of players say, I'm just grateful for the opportunity and grateful for the fans, blah, blah, blah. But one thing that I really got from him, I really felt the gratitude that he had and he was experiencing, because Sam Darnold was a he was on track to be basically just a journeyman quarterback who's just trying to find just a place to, kind of hold down the fort until somebody else, until a team gets their quarterback in the future. That's kind of what it was going to be the case in Minnesota. Is what a lot of people thought when I don't remember the quarterback's name. I wrote about him, but I can't remember his name now. Ends up getting hurt right before his rookie season, and then though he just takes off. Like I said, his first 3 years in New York weren't great. He goes to Carolina for a couple of years. Those don't go off just real good either. He ends up being Brock Purdy's backup in San Francisco. And then he goes to Minnesota to either be the backup or the safety valve for the Minnesota Vikings, and ends up getting a chance to start and has his best year up until that point, leads the Vikings to a 14-3 record, and then basically does the exact same thing in Seattle, but this time they end up winning the Super Bowl, and he is a big part of the big reason why. He's the first quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl after having played for 5 different teams. And like I said, you could feel just how grateful he was for the opportunity, because it was getting to a point where he wasn't going to have a whole lot of opportunities. He probably was getting ready to head towards television, towards coaching, or something like that, because, like I said, he was running out of opportunities. He could have probably been a career backup. He probably could have done that for a number of years. And you can make really good money as being a career backup and just sitting on the sideline. But he steps up in a big way for Minnesota and ends up leading the Seattle Seahawks to the Super Bowl this year. And like I said, it's just a really impressive story. He's a really good guy. Like I said, it was fun to listen to him talk and to be able to write a story about him. And I was really grateful for the opportunity. So thank you to Ethan and the Underdog Tribune. Thank you to Raising Cane's, Olivia Berry, who kind of set up our trip and did a lot of the promo for this for Raising Cane's. Appreciate you guys as well. Thank you for the opportunity. I would love to be able to have the opportunity to do it again. So, and she said they might bring me out again for another event that they do, because they do a lot of these apparently. So that's something to look forward to. And maybe next time I'll be more prepared and be able to include that into the podcast, the actual footage from the event. So, all right, let's finish up the show with a quick discussion on A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And also I want to talk about Wonder Man as well. I haven't talked about that show either. Night of the Seven Kingdoms so far, to me, is going to end up being, at least these first couple of months, is going to end up being the show of the year so far. I wasn't really sure what to make of this show. I talked a little bit about it previously. I didn't know what this show was going to be. I wasn't familiar with the story. I knew it was the tale of Dunk and Egg. I didn't know who these characters were. And I thought my understanding of what the story was, it's based off of like a 100-page novella, and there's a series of these novellas. And my understanding of what it was going to be was it was just going to be like this kind of more lighthearted, not, real low stakes type version of Game of Thrones. And that's what it really appeared to be for like the first half of the show. But when they make the reveal that Egg is actually Aegon, and why I didn't see that coming, I don't know. I probably should have, but I really bought into the fact that they were selling this as a low stakes Game of Thrones show. And when they make that reveal, it becomes quite apparent this is going to be a much higher stakes thing than what we had thought. And then when the future king rides out with Dunk for the trial of 7, and there's that really wonderful moment. And that's one of the things I thought was really awesome. We got kind of the tease of the Game of Thrones theme song previously at the very beginning of the show in that first episode, and then they kind of cut it real quick with him taking a crap behind a tree to kind of like just do a play on that. But then when we see him come out to join Dunk on the battlefield for the trial of 7, they play the song and it's like, okay, no, we're really in this world again. This is the world that you guys have kind of come to know and love, and we're really doing this. And like I said, these characters are really great. Dunk and Egg are just fantastic. The kid who plays Aegon, is just really, really good. And it's really surprising as good as he is, because if you watch like the behind the scenes thing that they do at the end of each episode, he's kind of annoying in that, to be perfectly honest with you. So the fact that he can really turn on these acting chops is really impressive to me. Like I said, every time that they get his like perspective on the character, I'm like, okay, can we not do him because he's kind of annoying when he's doing that part of it. But the performance that he's giving is just really really good. We got the penultimate episode. It's very one thing I'm really interested in this is because Egg or Egon, whatever we want to call him, he is the fourth in he's the fourth son of the fourth son. So like he's way down the he's way down the ascension line. But one of the things that we know about this character is he's going to become king, and they've basically kind of told you that in the story because of what the fortune teller told them earlier. And like I said, it's just a really interesting show. I really enjoyed it. You know, only 6 episodes. They're all like 35 minutes apiece. It's just a really solid watch. You don't really have to know much about Game of Thrones to get into it. So if you haven't, I would highly recommend it. I really love this show, and I can't wait to see what they do with it going forward. All right, I do want to talk about Wonder Man. I don't think I've talked about this show. If I have, I'll talk about it again. It came out a while back, and like I said, I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to talk about this show. But Yahya Abdul-Mateen is just really. This show was built kind of around him taking on this role, and what I like about what they did with this show. Marvel has been very hit or miss with their TV shows. I thought their original shows were really, really good. This show, I think, might be their best effort yet. And one of the reasons why I think it works so well is because they tried to make an actual television show. The previous shows they'd always made were like movies broken up into 6 parts. And I don't know that really works real well when you're making a TV show. If you're going to make a TV show, you need to make a show that feels like TV. And a lot of their previous shows didn't feel like television. They felt like movies that were just kind of chopped up and they basically found stopping points, and that's where they would stop it. And it didn't always work real well for Marvel in terms of their television. But this worked incredibly well. They probably could have done a week to week on this, or maybe done 2 episodes at a time, whatever it might have been. They decided to go ahead and release it all at once, and it gets rave reviews for good reason. Yahya Abdul-Mateen is just really good. It's a very different story in which most superhero characters that we've ever come to know and come to love, they embrace the fact they have powers. They embrace the fact that they are special in whatever ways. Wonder Man, Yahya Abdul-Mateen's character, runs from that. He doesn't want to be special. He doesn't want to have these things because it is basically holding him back from getting a career in theater based on some of the rules that they set in this part of the MCU, in which, you know, they're not called metahumans in DC, but special people, I can't remember what the word they used, but they can't, enhanced individuals or whatever, can't be a part of television. They do a really good job with a standalone episode that shows why, because of a character named Doorman, and then he ended up basically killing Josh Gad as a result in the story. So like I said, this was a really solid show. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm really looking forward to more of what we get from this show. This character, I hope they do more with him. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I'm looking forward to seeing if they can really build this character up some and making him more of a part of the MCU. I would be really, really excited if they did. So, all right, guys. It's been going for a little over 30 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, until next time, we'll talk to you then.